Welcome to country Victoria, Australia. My partner and I have spent the last 2.5 years renovating this old modified miner's cottage, and it was finally time to tackle the shed. The shed was built out of hardwood timber on a concrete slab. At some point the weatherboards were removed and it was covered in asbestos sheeting, at least that's what we think. Storing some old furniture, make-do bench tops for a previous owner's handiwork, and heaps of forgotten items, we knew it was going to require a lot of work to get it up to scratch. It remained on the back burner while we tackled higher priority projects in and around the house. And if you'd like to check out other videos on our renovations, both in the house and out, check out my channel. Digging a trench from the house to eventually wire the shed wasn't fun, while patio works made the debate for what to do with the cracked slab top of mind once again. We decided to leave it and eventually build a level timber floor on top. The new patio gave us a level for the new floor and a much healthier and attractive access. After a couple years of renovating and using the old sunroom in my house as my workshop, it was finally time to tackle this beast. As you can imagine, after 2 years of renos, this building became a storage room for timber and items we just didn't want in the house. First, just getting everything out of the shed, including old furniture, cabinet, an old furnace, gross floor covering, someone's dirty laundry. Removing the old divider that we're guessing used to house chickens. And that's not sus at all. Harvesting the hardwood ply from this old dance floor to use in some shelving I had in mind. Sistering a couple of studs that needed some help. And getting the dirt away from the side of the shed to stop the water coming in. At some point I was left with timber. Timber, and more timber. Needing to get this out of my way, and also wanting to build a storage solution, I wanted to build a structure that could hold all the spare timber, clear everything out of the rafters, and help get me started getting organized. Covering the first wall with some thin ply was more cosmetic, as I just needed the studs on that wall for the unit I was going to build. I built a foundation structure out of ply that I could level. And now you can see just how out of level the shed really is. Then constructing some mini stud frames for the rest of the unit and getting those up and attached to the foundation piece and the wall. Then starting to cut down the dance floor ply, lining out the shelving structure, and building some shelving. Just getting everything out of the rafters made me breathe easier. On to the next side, clearing the old workbench and vise, which was much more difficult to remove than it makes it seem. And removing the old bench top to reveal the last piece of furniture this shed has gifted me. Onto the floor. First getting everything out of the shed. This is going to include a bit of a threshold that would be the same level as the patio, followed by a step up onto the main floor in order to achieve a level surface front to back. First deciding on the depth of the threshold, then building it out of studs and a dance floor ply. Cutting the studs to length and ripping them down so the structure would sit solid on the concrete. And giving the ply a mitered edge. Then getting my levels for the floor set, using some long studs and a board at the back. Then getting each floor joist cut and trimmed down so it would be level across and from front to back. Then, given the state of the floor, I needed to measure at each instance for the height of each support, cut those down, and then attach them with screws. Then getting the noggins installed. These were less about holding weight than holding the structure of the floor together. Then using some form plies, the flooring itself, cutting it down to size and screwing it down. Easier said than done. These form ply boards were heavy as all get out, hence the little dolly. Getting each piece in and down took some negotiating for a jigsaw. I'd have to rip a bit off the front to get a straight line despite the boards being square with the shed. Frickin' wind. Once all the boards were in their place, first I just wanted to tack the boards down and get some pilot holes in, then go back with screws afterwards. Knee pads do help.
Is it level?
On its own, it's fairly level.
But don't go setting a handful of ball bearings on it.
Yes, I know, I see you. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
First tackling this eave by covering it with some old lining boards that were up on the roof. Then getting on to line the walls with ply, first tacking up some timber to take the corner piece. Then scoring and trimming down each piece so they landed where they needed to on the studs. Then hiding a little mistake. Then finishing the workbench, I'd started out of some more studs. For this, I just used more of the same form ply for the bench top, old packaging scraps for the bottom shelves, and sunk a space for my miter saw. Then painted it all black. With Sparky Day coming, I knew I wanted to have 2 large LEDs hanging from the ceiling, as well as some pendants over the workbench. I used some old boards to create a piece to mount the pendants on. And cut some black chain for the LEDs to hang from. Sparky's roughed out the wiring. Then I went back and finished lining that wall. Attached the bench top to the workshop now that it was in its place. And gave the edge a nice chamfer. Sparky Day 2, the lights were hung and a box put in so the shed can be on semi-circuit. Things are really starting to take shape, with more to come, including the next thing on my list, a set of barn doors to cover my storage area. First getting out a stud I could use as a header for the cabinet on which the hardware could be mounted. Evening out that dip, then cutting out the top piece to take the end of the door. Do you think I planned for that or not? Cutting the board down to size, then mapping out where the hardware would be mounted, and then mounting it. Trimming off the end piece, attaching that. Then attaching additional pieces of timber on the sides and the middle of the top of the cabinet on which the hardware stud could be secured to, in addition to getting some screws from below. I went to Homer's, my favorite secondhand spot in Shepparton, but none of the doors were calling out to me, so I finally landed on the cheapest internal door from Bunnings, thinking I could dress it up in other ways. First cutting them down to size, and attaching the hardware. And taking it for a little spin. Then using some hardwood I had left over from a desk I built to put on each side to make the door a bit wider and look a bit cooler. Then covering the bottom with some inconspicuous timber. Can't have any hornets or spiders calling those home.
I can't move. Could you come in here, please?
Then I had to do the same thing I did to the top of the cabinet to the bottom. First moving that stud back. Then cutting back the bottom shelf. Then just giving the doors a nice coat of ivory paint to contrast with all the blackened timber. Then getting my tools a bit organized. Not this is decoration the shed gave me. On to finishing up some wall covering. Then beginning to cover the workbench with some old lining boards I had lying around. I built this handy shelf for my speaker and bits. Starting to look like a proper workspace. Then it was door day. I wanted to swap out the old cumbersome barn doors with some bifold doors that would be more functional. Back to Homer's, I landed on building them out of hardwood using some ply for the panels. Getting the sticks out of my handy storage area. Making some initial cuts and being thankful I finally have a miter saw bench.
Wish I had a workshop. Wish the shed were done.
And beginning assembly, on the patio dining table of course. And working with this old timber, it was really important to get the dimensions right, understanding they were pretty straight, but not perfectly straight. Then applying some glue, clamping them, and countersinking some 100mm screws into each joint. The outer pair of doors would be 60 centimeters, while the inner would be 80 centimeters wide. 82 is standard in Australia. Then on to routing out for the panels. and chiseling out the corners.
Oh, you should have wanted a corner chisel.
I know. It's the same thing. Like,
Oh, fuck, I should have gotten a corner chisel.
I'm giving it a decent sand to take most of the splinters off. Then onto the panels. First screwing in where they bulged out. Then nailing the rest. On to hanging the doors, which required me to dress up like an albino penguin, as I needed to remove the material beside the doors in order to take them off. This piece was questionable. This piece was definitely asbestos. And this piece was definitely blue board. Upon getting into this piece, it was also cement board. Then I wanted to remove this piece as the edges were very pronounced and I was dreaming of a transom window. Shaving cream is apparently a good thing to use to minimize dust, not to mention my sexy outfit. Then a little cleanup. And on to removing the doors. First I wanted to decide which door went where based on their final shape, as there were some little bends here and there as I didn't plane these down before construction. The right side was way out, the left side not so bad. For the right, creating a bit of an A-frame, first attaching one stud to the wall with some timber taken off the top. Then attaching the board the door would be mounted on with some noggins interspersed for strength. Some glue and screws for the other side. Then the threshold magically appeared into place again. Then on to hanging the doors. First mounting the hinges. Then the doors themselves. Which was so easy. I mean...
Agony! Oh, the torture they teach!
And voila! Doors! Sierra wasn't too impressed. Oh, I'm not done. First getting a mushroom stop on one door for the one door to shut into. And then some panic bolts to keep them in place. Then adding some studs behind the used asbestos to create a full frame for the glass. And onto the trim work. First covering the left corner with some ply to match the thickness of the rendered material above. And repeating on the right corner. scrap timber from ours. Jigging this one out to go around the power connection, then finishing the other corners. This one I created a bit of a false top to hide the slant of the wall. Then the door and transom trim. And the transom glass. Attaching a little latch so the doors wouldn't blow open. Then back to finish the workbench by building some sliding doors. First creating a track for the panels to slide on, using a new stick of pine and using a table saw to route out some tracks. Screwing those down, and installing a simpler track for the top using just one piece of timber and the back of the apron. And voila! Then covering the rest of the internal cabinets. Fill that in a bit later on. But what about handles for the sliding doors, you might ask? Well, I used an offcut of hardwood from the doors, made several passes with a round nose router bit, several cuts of my miter saw, and there you go, handles. Flintstone edition. Barney Rubble would be wrapped. It rained and I hadn't painted yet. Attaching another handy latch. Then it rained again and I put handles on my doors so they'd be easier to grab. And if you've made it this far, go ahead and give me a like. It'll certainly help me out with the algorithm. Then, painting day. Tape is for suckers. And everybody loves a painting time lapse. course, there's a lot to still get done. Under here, I'll be putting in a little shop vac to hook up with the miter saw. This back corner, I need to figure out what and how I'm gonna store stuff over here. Get the ladders hung, finish that final piece of furniture the shed gifted me, just some random stuff I'm gonna figure out what to do with. Also I want to build a table for my now new table saw and an outfeed table of sorts. They can both be on casters and I can push out of the way. And then on the side, Simon's been wanting to espalier some camellias, which I didn't even know what he was talking about when he said espalier. But yeah, so it'll look great when they're all grown in. And then we'll be putting some mirrors, a couple of which you may have seen in the back of the shed. We'll be putting some mirrors on that back wall so that if you are sitting at the dining table facing the wall, you can look through the reflection and see some of the yard in the background. But all in all, I just love how it all came together. Even this little corner piece of molding that is just a bit of a fake. So what do you think? What's your favorite part? That's it for now. Cheers. Bye.